morning, Utsoda, and good morning, Maya Durga. Namaste. Maya, namaste. How are you?
Maya, namaste, namaste, namaste.
All right.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining, Utsoda. Maya, thank you. And thank you to all our viewers for joining today. Utsoda, this is Hindu Lounge number
44.
44. And Utsoda, on this day, I bring you some good news. So, first of all, let me tell everyone what is Hindu Lounge and introduce ourselves, and then I'll break a really good news. Utsoda, this is Hindu Lounge for all our viewers. With me is Utsoda Utsav Chakrabarti. He is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and Hindu Pact is the initiative of World Hindu Council of America or VHPA that brings you Hindu Lounge every day. With Utsada, I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, VHPA. And so we come live every Sunday and talk about the contemporary American Hindu issues. And we are live on our Facebook channel, which is facebook.com/vhpamerica.org. We are live on VHPA videos, and we are on Twitter at VHPA News. And again, this is Hindu Lounge brought to you by Hindu Pact, which stands for actually the Hindu Advocacy and Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Initiative of World Hindu Council of America. And Utsada, uh, uh, welcome to Hindu Lounge, episode number 44. And as I said at the beginning that I do have some great news to share today. And the great news I have to share is Utsada, not only we are now live on the three channels that I mentioned a little bit earlier, we are also now on Tag TV. So we are on Tag TV's YouTube channel, and we are also on the set tops cable boxes on Tag TV. So that all of a sudden we have thousands of new people who are going to watch us, thousands of new viewers, and we want to welcome all of them. Just to give you an idea, Tag TV has on their YouTube channel alone over 250,000 subscribers. So we expect no less than 10% of those people watching us every week, and going up to hopefully 25 to 30% of those people watching us. So now, Utsuda, you are in big league, and welcome to Hindu Lounge. Your introductory remarks before we go to the topics for the day.
Well, thank you, Ajay Bhai, for this wonderful remark. And it's very good news to hear that more and more people will listen to us. Uh, I don't know about the big leagues, but it's not about the league here. It's about reaching out to people who are interested and have an appetite for understanding a perspective that is rarely ever shown in the mainstream media. That perspective is based on honest analysis, on research, and on on what's happening on the ground in many places. So I'm happy that we will be able to reach a larger audience, and I'm hopeful that it will bring about more and more people better understanding of the global Hindu perspective and as well as Hindu American perspective.
Absolutely. And Utsada, we want to tell everyone that Hindu Lounge is a call in show, right? I mean, we want people to actually call in and participate in the conversation. And we are going to give out the numbers on all our chat and other channels so that people can actually dial in and they can join the conversation. We really welcome people to join the conversation because we get a lot of comments on chat, and we get a lot of we get a lot of feedback during and after the show by email, by WhatsApp, by text messages. But wouldn't it be wonderful actually if people dialed in and joined the conversation and express their view for other people to hear and make it a truly conversational show? So that with that, let me introduce the topic for the day. So that this, we've been doing this now for 44 weeks, and it just so happened that our shows kind of coincided with the election cycle, and it coincided with the COVID-19 and all of that, right? So we have been talking about elections, and we've been talking about the candidates and their view of Hindus, and predominantly among Hindus in America, people of Indian origin. And we but now that there's a new administration in place, and the administration is now putting key people in the administrative positions, political appointees from the administration and various departments, various government agencies, and also in the in the White House in various capacities. And
Ajay, can I interrupt you for a minute? For some reason, maybe it's just me, but I'm not able to hear you that loudly.
oh,
I think the microphone you have is at a lower intensity.
okay.
Just check it. Maybe it's just my speakers, but you sound at a much lower voice than what you used to sound in every
Oh,
other show.
so that it might be me. How about now?
I think now you are sounding great.
Perfect. It was the I had the gain on my microphone had kind of gone down, so I have now adjusted that. Um, Perfect. Thank you for pointing out. So that, as I was saying, we have now we are now at a stage where the president is making all the presidential appointments, and as the presidential appointments are being made, we notice a trend that a lot of Indians, and among Indians, people of Indian origin is what I mean. And among people of Indian origin, a lot of people with Hindu names and presumably Hindus, are being appointed in the Biden administration. And that plus, we talked about a couple of weeks ago that the Mars mission was, the person who was in charge of the Mars mission landing was of Indian origin, and we talked about her wearing a bindi and expressing her identity. And President Biden had a conversation with her, Swati Mohan, her name, and I want to play this conversation. I want to play this conversation with Sudha for you and for all our for all our viewers, and I want to get your take on it, Sudha. So let me share the screen and let me get your view on what President Biden said. Okay, and let me know when you can see and hear the screen, the video.
Indian of descent Americans are taking over the country. You, my vice president, my speechwriter.
So the Indians and Hindus have arrived. President Biden seems to say that we are now taking over the world. We are taking over America, and so that he has kind of come a long way because this is the president who in 2006, for people who remember, when he was a senator from Delaware, right? Before he became the vice president, he said in Delaware, the largest growth of population is Indian Americans moving from India. You cannot go to 7-Eleven or Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I am not joking. This is President Biden saying, at the time, Senator Biden saying, I am not joking. So I guess we have come a long way from Dunkin' Donuts and 7-Elevens to landing a Mars mission, huh?
So I have a couple of points to make on that. First of all, it is a good recognition that President Biden understands and admits and addresses the fact that Indian Americans, he didn't say Hindu Americans, so we have to be very clear about where he's coming from. Indian Americans or Americans of Indian origin are doing well in America, and they're reaching places. That's a very that's a compliment in many ways, even though it also highlights the fact that President Biden actually has not been fully aware of the role of the community over the last 20-25 years. But that it is still a compliment. So that is number one. Number two, his own remarks from 2006. I remember those statements those days. It played a lot on on radios and TV shows, because it was so prejudiced. And in 2006, he had remarked that he could not go to a 7-Eleven without actually having an Indian accent, which in a way, I think, again, it's a very Biden-esque statement where he means something positive, but he comes up with a statement that almost sounds borderline racist. So and that is he's not known to be the best person expressing himself. He became the president, but we still have to understand and admit to his weaknesses. So it's a long way to 16 years, 15 years. He has come from addressing Indian Americans in a very positive light. But more importantly, what comes out of this statement is something that should be taken by the Hindu American community as well, with some support and some happiness, because he essentially put to rest a narrative that has been strongly promoted by Islamists and extreme left within the Democratic Party, and that is the South Asian narrative. I mean, it could be because Biden is so old that he has never picked up on the South Asian narrative, which is a very last decade narrative that has prevailed within the Indian American youth, as well as the and promoted by the Pakistani American and the Islamists and the extreme left, because it helps dilute the Indian identity and more so the Hindu identity, which the Islamists and the Muslim American community doesn't really want to see grow. So he inadvertently negates the South Asian narrative, and that is something that we should be happy about, even though he probably didn't mean to.
So I believe that we should give credit where it's due. And in this particular case, the president came out and recognized the contribution of Indian Americans, Hindu Americans.
He did not mention Hindu Americans. So
he did not mention. No, I understand. But
and that will come to bite us to a decade later. But that's we'll do for a decade.
Look. I mean, I'm accepting the incrementalism in President Biden accepting Indians first and Hindus next. And at some point, even though in the last election cycle, the president didn't recognize the fact that 20 million people or 25 million people who in some way or the other follow Hindu Dharma, the precepts of Hindu Dharma, and there are only about 5 million people of Indian origin. I think at some point, all the politicians, including President Biden, will realize that Hindu American is a much bigger, much stronger narrative that they want to go after, and a much bigger voting population they want to go after. And to that point, Dhaval Joshipuraji has joined us, and on the chat, Dhavalji is saying that the timing of Biden phone to Swati Mohan of NASA, giving the details of Indians employed in the cabinet and senior positions, and Neeraj's withdrawal indicates that the Indian vote matters. Before you comment on that, I want to just share this one screen with you to kind of facilitate your conversation. So take a look at this, Utsada. This is a graphic that I got from socialnews.xyz. And you can see in this graphic that at that time, when they put together this graphic, there were 20 Indian Americans in the top, given the top post in Biden administration. And then I have a text from, you can see from Times of India, the more recent one, which says that Biden has appointed now 55 Indians. Every day you look at the Indian American news and you realize there are a few more, people of Indian origin, a few more people with the Hindu name are being appointed to the cabinet. The number is now 55, and you can see they're in significant positions. I mean, like all the way from the vice president to the person, Vivek Murthy, who has been appointed, who has been nominated to be to the Surgeon General of United States. So there is a significant number of Indian Americans in the administration now. So the comments on what Dhavalji has said and comments on some of these nominees and what sentiments does it bring out in you?
Well, I think there is no doubt that there has been a significant number of Indian Americans who have been appointed in the administration, and it comes from the fact that Indian Americans, especially the left-leaning Indian Americans, have largely uh, been the backbone of Democratic Party's outreach to the community, and they did a great job delivering votes for President Biden. So it is good to see that President Biden is appointing Indian Americans to that role. Again, I have to be very clear to say that not many of them are very supportive of Hindus or proud Hindus. That is another conversation for another day. Many of them are actually quite anti-Hindu. But overall, when it comes to Indian Americans, I think they stood by the Democratic Party in big numbers, and they also supported President Biden's campaign in big numbers. So they are getting appointments in good numbers. Uh, that may or may not be good for India, since I'm comparing apples to apples, Indian Americans to India. Many of them are, as I said, not very pro-Hindu, and India is a 80% Hindu country. Many of them don't have the correct information on India on many issues, have gone on the record not supporting India on many issues. So Indian Americans getting appointment does not translate to India benefiting from it all the time, but it is still a step in the right direction. I would rather have Indian Americans in this administration than not have them. And when it comes to Hindu Americans, I think there is a conversation that needs to be had about why there is so little Hindu American identity that is promoted by the Democratic Party. We have had shows about that before. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, because that is a strategically dangerous minefield that we are entering. And it will bite us eventually in the next decade.
So, let me ask you this question. There was speaking of Indians, and not particularly Hindus, the high office, there was an Indian woman who actually made somewhat of a history by giving a press briefing at the White House this week, right? And it's not like she's not the first Indian to do a press briefing, but certainly probably the first Indian woman. And there's some more unique things about her. So what do we know about her?
Well, there was Samira Fazili, Indian American of Kashmiri origin, who was at the White House press briefing. She is very proud, maintains a very proud Islamic identity, wears a hijab, and has in the past been very actively supportive of a group that is anti-India, and honestly speaking, that has connections to terrorist organizations. So now that's an Indian American for all that counts. But that's not an Indian American we want at the Capitol, at the White House, or in the administration, because clearly her background is very, very anti-India, and her connections to people in Jammu and Kashmir are to people who are anti-India and who support terrorists. So that's one Indian American you didn't want there. So I as I said, it looks good overall. And I would rather have Indian Americans in the administration than not have. But at the same time, we have to be very careful about and deal with each person with a pinch of salt, as I said.
Absolutely. And so I think one of the things that, that I absolutely agree with you, that we will need to really build this, a groundswell support from Hindus in America to really educate the administration, this and future, that what is significant, what is important to Hindus in America is not the people who carry Hindu names, not the people who carry Indian names, but people who actually sympathize and empathize with the American Hindu issues. And right now, by looking at the appointments in the administration, it's a mixed bag. And I think, I think Hindus in America will have to assert themselves to make sure that, that the right people are in the administration. sometimes it's actually worse for the community to have someone carrying a Hindu name sitting in the administration taking anti-Hindu positions. Uh, so it is much worse to have someone like Pramila Jayapal in the Congress than to not have Pramila Jayapal in the Congress, right?
I think you could not have come up with a better example. Yeah, I mean, it's just
So I think Maya Durga put you on mute because she
yeah.
didn't like what you were saying.
So what I'm saying is that you're absolutely right in your. Well, she has a lot to say for sure.
He has a lot to say.
So, so my point was that you're absolutely right, Ajay bhai. I think it's better to have Indian American in the position of power who actually understands and empathizes with Indian American and Hindu American issues than have somebody who sounds Indian American, has an Indian American name, and as it all that matters in America has the skin color of the Indian American, because that's all Americans care about, and then not actually understand or empathize with any of the issues.
Right. So let's go to the. I think that's a good summary of of what we were trying to say about the Biden statement. So let's conclude this segment and move on to the next statement, next segment. And so I want to introduce the next segment with some kind of a music. Let's try this one. So, with the sound of thunder, Utsara, let's talk about Freedom House report. So, Utsara, Freedom House is this think tank based in Washington D.C. and they.
Ajay bhai, hold on. I want to say something. Your choice of background music and your the dramatics that you promote will parallel and even beat some of the most iconic Telugu movies in Tollywood.
My criteria is that if I see that Maya is happy with the music, I see a smile on her face, and I know I'm doing something right. And I saw a big smile on her face with that music, right, Maya? All right. With that, Utsada, tell us what is Freedom House? Why is Freedom? What is Freedom House? I know it's a think tank, but tell us a little bit more about Freedom House.
Well, Freedom House is a group that has been significantly known for its role in for let me be just open and clear about how I look at it. It's a non-profit group that does get government funding, is known historically to promote America's geopolitical interests. And when I say America, it's America and NATO geopolitical interests, and acts as a soft power arm of the U.S. Outreach to the world, U.S. foreign policy, U.S. Geostrategic interests. So Freedom House is known for that. It gets funded. Some of its funding comes from American government, even though a lot of its funding comes from nonprofits and philanthropic groups, some of whom are, the infamous or famous George Soros type people. So, so Freedom House is known for that role. It has in the past, during the Cold War, it was probably one of the organizations that supported dissidents in the Soviet republics, former Soviet republics, Eastern Europe. It is known for supporting dissidents in countries that America is not really friendly with. But it is also known to be, somebody who is an organization that is used by establishment in America to signal dissatisfaction with many countries and their leaders. That's I think how I look at Freedom House.
And Freedom House issues a report every year, and they rank the countries based on based on the multiple facets of freedom, whether it's freedom of press, freedom to participate in the election, the free and fair judiciary. So they analyze these various facets of freedom in each of the countries, and they come up with an index. And when the and this index is it basically tells the world, or whoever reads that report, as to how free overall that country is. And so that this Freedom House think tank came up with a report uh, last week, and they ranked India, the largest democracy in the world, Utsoda, the largest democracy in the world. They ranked them. They used to always consistently rank India as free, but now they have ranked India as mostly free. Not free, but mostly free. Is that the right one, or should I have this one?
I think you know I think we are giving too much importance to Freedom House. It is not it has the word freedom in it. That doesn't mean it is about freedom. It is about interests and agendas, and in this case, because of the nature of the funding it gets, about promoting a certain ideological perspective. And after the toolkit episode, after the way the anti-CAA protests, anti-370 protests, the so-called farmers protests panned out in India over the last year and a half, I would have been surprised if they had actually, kept India as a free country, because they are the same people who make the toolkits. So they are the American, they are the Washington back end of the toolkit folks, or the Greta Thunbergs of the world. So it is a logical step they have taken. This should have been expected for people who follow these things. This doesn't affect India in any way. It doesn't affect freedom in India in any way. India is probably a much more freer country than America, I would say, in many ways. And we can discuss those things over the next 15 minutes or so. But yeah, I don't think we should even worry about the Freedom House reports. It is a partisan organization. It has an agenda to peddle. You just happen to be, India just happens to be at its crosshairs in the past 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And it's going to continue to stay that way. As long as Prime Minister Modi stays in power and continues to make the reforms that he's making, he's going to stay that way, because these guys don't like reforms. These guys like India to be a third world country with a huge market.
And so that I agree with you. Uh, as always, my concern is, what is the impact this is going to have on Hindus in America, right? And that impact on the next generation of Hindus is significant. I mean, I know that in India nobody cares about Freedom House report, but I mean, other than the leftists in India and their partners in the leftist in the media and their partners who are on the street protesting, the professional protesters, as they were, as Prime Minister of India called them. So these are the people who are who are going to now tweet and retweet and keep posting on various social media, and just kind of in a closed echo chamber. They're basically going to amplify the sound. And the more they amplify, the less support they get from the masses in India, and the less support they, and more, BJP keeps winning. Nothing, we sit in America. We really have not much to do with the politics of India. What we are concerned about is, what is the impact that is going to have on the Hindus in America? And I think that, and the kind of narrative that builds up here then prompts the youth, the Indian youth, the Hindu youth, to say, I'm not Indian, I'm not Hindu, I'm a South Asian. And that actually goes back to the thing you were talking about earlier, which is this de-identification of Hindus, robbing Hindus of their identity. robbing people of Indian descent who carry 10,000 years of civilizational achievements, robbing them of their civilizational achievements, and making them part of something that is to be ashamed of rather than something to be proud of.
Absolutely, and I think that is happening. That will continue to happen, and institutions like the Freedom House will exacerbate that, and that is true. So it brings me to the next point, which is how do we deal with it? So again, this is just Freedom House is the New York Times of the philanthropy world. So you are going to have more reports like Freedom House coming. I mean, if you notice the Time Magazine international cover today, it's about the so-called farmers protest. I mean, that's what the outcome was known to be. I mean, after Greta Thunberg released that toolkit, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to throw even more resources into this investment. So, it's a challenge. Unfortunately, it's a challenge that is going to become a civilizational challenge for the Hindu Americans, because unlike many other countries where this cabal of geopolitical globalist left and Islamists are working together to control and take control, and manage countries. Many of those countries are already Christian countries. Many of those countries are already part of Western civilization. So they don't have an added impetus to destroy and demean their native religion and culture. In our case, it's a double whammy, because in doing their geopolitical bidding, in doing their anti-India objectives, in bringing out their anti-India perspective, they are also going to, as a side game, they are also going to destroy the Hindu narrative and the Hindu civilizational perspective, because that stands in the way of attacking India as a
Yeah.
country. And so India is in the crosshairs of these geopolitical forces for completely different reasons. But Hindu civilization stands in the way of them defeating India and, metaphorically speaking, recolonizing it. And they will go after Hindus civilization, and by extension American Hindus, to bring it down. So brace for it. In the next 10 years, you will have even more anti-Hindu narrative being built in at an institutional level in America. Freedom House is an institution. New York Times is an institution. So these are revered institutions that will surprisingly be very crass and very aggressive and brutal and ruthless in their anti-Hindu narrative. And you can see that. People will be surprised by how ruthless they are, but when you are at their crosshairs, you will feel it.
Well, so let me show you how blatantly, misleading this report and the underlying assumptions in this report are. Okay, so I'm going to share some slides, and I have a few notes here. So here is one of the things, one of the questions. As I told you, there are multiple categories, and they each of the categories they describe how they arrived at a particular rating, and then on a scale of 1 to 4, they give the rating. So one of the parameters. On which the freedom is ranked is this question: do various segments of population, including ethnic, racial, religious, gender, LGBT plus, and other relevant groups, have full political rights and electoral opportunities? Now, Utsada, remember, India is a country with a very long history, and at the same time, very recent, painful recent memories. In India, whether it's as a democracy, right from the independent way, before even independence, there were provincial elections in India. And at that time, in order to ensure that all people get appropriate representation, India actually broke the first principle of democracy of one person, one vote. And India, in order to appease the minority in India, India came up with religion-based electorates. And so if you were a minority in a particular constituency, your vote almost did not matter. And this was tilted highly against Hindus. And this was in 1920s and 30s. And what happened? That kind of appeasement of separating out the constituency by religion led to eventual partition of India. Okay, so India has already tried that. So now what India is doing is what America does, what UK does, what France does, what Germany does, what every other democracy in the world, in Japan does, which is one person, one vote, and do not segregate the constituencies by religion. However, India goes a step beyond. There are marginalized classes in India, people who have suffered historic wrongs, and for those people, there are seats set aside, constituencies set aside. Other democracies do not do that. Canada doesn't do that, United States doesn't do that. And then, based on the plurality of the vote, a person gets elected. Fair democracy. Now, if you look at in a fair democracy, to rank the country based on how many Muslims got elected or how many women, how many Christians got elected or how many Hindus got elected cannot be the criteria for judging democracy. We don't judge the democracy in America by saying what percentage of Hispanic Americans got elected to Senate and how many African Americans and how many people from particular nationality got elected to United States Senate, how many are Catholics, how many are Protestants, how many are Mormons, how many are, Baptists. We don't do that. We don't do that because we want the politicians to compete for all the votes. And based on the plurality of the vote, as a true democracy should, the people get elected. So to say that just 5% of chamber and out of 14% population, what kind of ridiculous calculation is that? And then to add the CAA to that, and CAA, which is meant to give refugee status to people who are fleeing persecution, and to add that to political rights and electoral opportunity, shows not just hypocrisy, but the fact that there is very little value assigned to human rights, a persecution of minority by Freedom House. Okay, and look at, if you read this text, where it says that the government is trying to create the National Register of Citizens, something the Supreme Court of India has mandated because people in Assam were faced with millions of people illegally crossing the border from Bangladesh. So Supreme Court mandated that we segregate the citizens from people who illegally entered the country and are trying to skew the demographics, trying to skew the electorate and get people elected who would let few more million people come and stay there illegally. So what are your comments?
Well, Ajay bhai, the thing is, as you noted very rightly, it's the tail wagging the dog here in the Freedom House report. They already had decided that they had to make India look bad. And then they went around looking for, semantics to make it work. So just to see how ridiculous this report is, imagine, a global organization declaring American democracy to be sham based on the fact that the only Hindu American presidential candidate who actually had won delegates in the Democratic Party was not allowed to speak at the Democratic Party convention. And therefore, this current presidential election stands null and void because it's not real democracy. I mean, would you hear that narrative from Freedom House about America? No. Would you hear that narrative from any Western, global watchdog organization about any other Western country? No. But this is exactly the language and the narrative that Freedom House came up with to make India, to declare India as not being free. So, these kinds of juggling of semantics, it probably works. I am pretty sure that 80% of the people who will quote Freedom House reports to target India will never actually read the report, and that is the goal of these organizations. They are here to create and amplify an existing narrative that is being built on false pretenses.
So now let's go to this next one, and that is freedom of expression and belief. I made some notes here, but you know, tell me what you think. This is the question where it says. So I'm not picking. There are a lot of questions here. I've only picked a handful of them just to give people a flavor of what kind of thinking goes into building anti-Hindu narrative in America with government funding. Okay, so this is a question: are there free and independent media in India? So I mean, I thought that we have in India the Wire and Caravan and Economics and Political Weekly and a whole bunch of English papers and some regional papers were blatantly anti-Hindu and they all flourish, right?
Well, I was reading a statistics yesterday, and people who are active on social media probably have also seen it. There have been 488,000 articles in the media complaining about how Prime Minister Narendra Modi is stopping the media about writing against him. So there are 500,000 articles complaining about how they are being stopped from writing about Modi. So you see the irony in this whole build-up, right? 488,000 articles complaining about why those articles are not, there are more of them. So it's a self-defeating narrative these people push. I would want to see how many articles they have in China, in Chinese media, about the Chinese Communist Party, criticizing the Chinese Communist Party. That would be a good measure to, the same people should do an apples to apples comparison, and see. And for that matter, even Russia, how many Russian media outlets, write against Putin in Russia. So, if there are 500,000 articles in India about India muzzling the media, then I think they're defeating their own purpose. And I think that's what people see. That's why, overall people don't get affected by this. It's the same professional protesters, the people whose livelihood depends on global anarchy and conflict. They are the ones who keep peddling this and amplifying this. But overall, people don't, and our kids will get negatively affected. Again, it brings us back to the same problem.
Exactly.
It's the American Hindu kids, the American Hindus, who eventually will be influenced by this to become anti-Hindu, and that is going to be the tragedy of our generation.
So some of these things are so ridiculous. I don't even know where to start talking about them. There was a pandemic last year, and the projections about India were really grave because it is 1.25 billion people living in India in a much more population, much higher population density than people live in America, or people live in Western Europe, or even South America, or even Africa, right? And this much more dense in terms of densely populated country. And a lot of people live in rural areas. A lot of people who have, the scientific education in India is not as high, and the Indian population had not faced a pandemic as COVID-19 before. And so the projections were really grave that millions and millions of Indians may die because of COVID-19. So the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, got the media together and said, please, spread the education about COVID-19, educate the people about social distancing, educate the people about self-isolation if you have any symptoms, and don't spread unnecessary negativity or rumors or pessimism. because you want to keep the spirits of the country high, where people are, in general, people are poorer than in a lot of other countries, and you want to make sure that this pessimistic and the doom and gloom does not take over while you are locking down the country, while people are getting out of, people who are in the service industry and people who are in construction industry and people in the other industries are being put out of jobs, and government is still trying to come up with the ways to support them, to get them food, to get them back to the, if they're internal migrants or if they're going to other states to work, to get them back to their home state and to villages where they came from. And so the prime minister does this press conference, a video conference, and tells the media to help play a constructive role. And now that is considered to be, that is considered to be a negative. Telling media not to spread fake news, about fake scientific news about COVID 19, is now considered to be anti freedom of press, anti freedom of expression, and anti freedom of belief. What do you make of this?
I
Sorry,
think
you're on mute again.
no, yeah. No, I put myself on mute because my daughter is makes noise behind me, so I try to
Ah,
make sure that you don't get interrupted when.
no, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think the whole point here is that if you compare this to how, in the last year or so, how American media looked at messaging on COVID. I mean, American media muzzled their own president, elected president, and started putting, fact checking and literally deleting accounts, deleting tweets, deleting, you know. So I think it's just very clear that this Freedom House report is just looking at ways. It is wagging. It's the tail wagging the dog. They're looking at ways to target India. They came up with any excuse. I mean, any non-excuse, and tried to make it into an excuse to target India. I mean, if misinformation was being spread about COVID, and the government of India urges media to stop doing that, they did the right thing. And to call it muzzling of information, will Freedom House go after America for muzzling QAnon media outlets and banning them and deplatforming them? Will Freedom House go after America for muzzling Parler and literally ensuring that Parler doesn't exist for 2 months, and all the media information coming through Parler was taken off? So, if people who care, people who are looking slightly deeper, will see the hypocrisy and the agenda driven politics here.
So I did not highlight this particular few narratives that come out of this particular slide, but as you were speaking, I was highlighting this because this is another area where the hypocrisy of Freedom House is exposed. The first is, they're talking about cow vigilantes, and from 2012 to 2018. They stopped at 2018 because in 2019 and 20 there were no cases of that are recorded in of death, but no killing. Okay, for whatever reason, I don't even know if this is related to cow killings or cow vigilantes, or as they call it, or what it is about. But the 45 deaths in about 8 years, 2012 to 2020. Every death matters. I don't know if this is related to cow vigilantes or not, or whatever it is. First of all, the term itself doesn't really make much sense to me. A murder is a murder. If it is a murder, treat it as a murder and prosecute it as a murder. I What I have a problem with it, so there is selective quoting of statistics, and the reason I say that is because if we have been doing this show for 44 weeks now, and how many times have we talked about the killing of Hindus for just because they're practicing Hindu dharma in India, where 80% of people follow Hindu dharma, and if you if you remember, one of the earliest shows we did was three sadhus who were passing through Palghar in Maharashtra, and their car broke down, and they were pulled out of their car and they were beaten to death. Okay, in West Bengal, uh, there were so many people in last 4 or 6 months who have been hung from the tree as an act of so-called lynching or murder by hanging. Last week we talked about uh, RSS Prachara, RSS Swayam Sevak rather in Kerala, who was beaten to death. And this happens in Kerala every other week. But that doesn't make it to the statistics because it does not fit a preordained narrative that they have in mind. They talk about judiciary, but then when a Supreme Court of India says that a temple demolished 460 years ago should be rebuilt because there's enough evidence that there used to be a temple here that was destroyed, they count that as against faith. At the same time, very equivalent cases in America where the monuments to slavery are brought down, that's considered freedom movement. But India's monument to slavery coming down is considered to be something against freedom of religion, unlawful destruction. Taking down a monument to a slave owner like Babri structure is not acceptable, but taking down statues of slave owners or slave traders in America, in UK, is considered sign of freedom. And finally, in this same question, they are against Indian Constitution, which says that you cannot have conversion with force or allurement or fraud, because that is considered to be somehow against the freedom of religion. How much more biased? So how much more biased can this report get?
Well, it can get more biased. Trust me. If in today's world of misinformation and disinformation as a tool for psychological warfare, it can get worse. So don't feel like this is the last of what you have seen coming. You know, they will make Hindus hang Hindus from trees. That's their goal, and this is how they will go about doing it. And this is not the first time this has happened in the world. It's just that we as a civilizational entity are at the crosshairs right now. It's a 21st century method of conflict, conflict, increasing conflicts. It's fault line fishing. It's going to keep increasing. It's going to dig into the fault lines that exist in such a diverse society that India is, and Hindu Americans are in America. So the whole purpose our viewers should understand why we are speaking about this so much is not because how much it affects India. That is given, and there will be other people who will be talking about it as well, like us. The reason we are talking about it is because this is going to come and affect us in America as Hindu Americans.
Absolutely.
And that's I want everybody who watches this show to understand that. Because
so let's talk about this one, the freedom of assembly, in a country where millions of farmers, as you said, are blocking the highways. Thousands of people are blocking one of the main arteries in Delhi, capital of India. No freedom of assembly?
Yeah, it's I would want let the Freedom House people have a Muharram procession in front of their office in DC and see how they feel about freedom of assembly.
And then those kinds of things remind me of a Hindi song. I don't know if you know this song. It's like "Jhoot bole kawa kaate."
Of course, I know this song. I mean, everybody who has spent more than 5 years in India, probably, especially in the 90s or 80s, would have known this song. But I really think we don't have the ability to do anything to discredit Freedom House. They are the Goliath, and we at most we are trying, to put it in a Western context, and for people to understand in Western phraseology, we are barely the Davids and they are the Goliaths. So
Yeah. Hey, so what about this? Is freedom of for non-governmental organizations, our favorite NGOs, particularly those engaged in human rights and governance-related work? Um, so uh, I thought that Soros had committed $1 billion to dethrone the current government in India. Uh, so why would there be, is that kind of, does he need to spend more, or what's the problem here?
well, the George Soros has spent close to a bill more. He has committed more than $1 billion to destabilize India. He has, something that is very blatantly what he did was to go and actually have a meeting with Prime Minister Imran Khan of Pakistan. I mean, if there was ever a signal of more ominous signal coming down India's way, he met Imran Khan a year ago. And I'm wondering what was the conversation between George Soros and Imran Khan about, you know, is it coincidental that right after that, all these Khalistani organizations became human rights organization and Dalit organizations
Maybe he
overnight?
was talking about how good Pakistan is doing in human rights and how the world should emulate it.
Maybe Soros will put more money into Pakistan for doing an amazing job with human rights and
Yeah, because I mean, we
wiping
have to
out
reward Pakistan,
its
right? I
native,
mean,
native minority populations.
maybe he's trying to reward Pakistan for amazing human rights jobs that they've done.
Not just in Pakistan, but in many other parts of the world, including in Afghanistan, where 3,000 American young men and women in uniform were killed through Pakistan's support.
Yeah,
So George Soros can go ahead and do those things,
yeah,
right?
why not?
Yeah.
So we talked about this about the independent judiciary. I thought that one of the things that India has always been praised by everyone in this who looks at India, analyzes and studies Indian democracy is that Indian judiciary is, especially the Supreme Court, is by and large, not just by and large, it's actually very independent. In fact, the appointments to Supreme Court are done by the collegium of the justices themselves to take out the politics out of it. And to say that the judiciary in India is not free and fair, because of the Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir, is again it's kind of we talked about it just a couple of minutes ago. This is just promoting anti-Hindu propaganda, buying into it and then amplifying it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, I think the judiciary in India was good until the Ram Janmabhoomi movement verdict came. And then judiciary became bad because how dare a native civilization recover a symbol of its heritage when in the entire world they have been reduced to rubble or relegated to the museums. So I mean, how dare we do that? So yeah, so the judiciary was free until the Ram Janmabhoomi movement verdict came, and then now it is not free. It is Modi's puppet, as they will eventually call it.
So that this one, the laws, policies, and practices guarantee equal treatment of various segments of the population, and then it goes around and says, uh, talks about the other backward castes, classes, and members of this population face routine discrimination, violence. Now, again, look, every country has people who, in some way or the other, historically have faced discrimination, and we are never for it. We want justice for everyone. Hindu Dharma says that everyone should be accorded equal rights. Everyone should be accorded, fair. Everyone should be Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, right? Entire universe is one family, and uh, and Hindu Dharma also says Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu. That means let everyone be happy. and so it's very, very similar to what American democracy propagates, which is equality, freedom for all, liberty, and liberty and pursuit of happiness. That is what Hindu Dharma thousands of years ago said. But what I find interesting in this is they're talking about other backward classes, and they're facing routine discrimination and violence. 90% of this report is about the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, being against freedom. It implies that, right? And then I come to this question. I said, wait a minute. Isn't the community that Prime Minister Modi comes from also classified as other backward classes? And if that is the case, then uh, and he didn't really come from a political family like some of the opposition party people have come from, and all of that. He has no political lineage that propelled him into the highest seat of the power. So there must be certain amount of equal opportunity somewhere in there, right? Uh, what do you think?
Well, as I said before, most of the people I have spoken to in America who go on and on about how Modi's anti, quote unquote, lower caste, anti, all the anti lists that they have. I have seen that almost 100% of them. I mean, I've barely met one or two people in a sample size of 200 people who have spoken to about this in the last 4 or 5 years. Most of them think that Modi is a Brahmin because that's the narrative that has been fed to them. That's how cut and paste this whole propaganda, toolkit is. They think Modi is a upper caste Brahmin, whatever that means in their mind. I don't think they even know what it means, but that's how it's repeated again and again, and that's how the people look at it, because that's what happens when you have propaganda. It just repeats a lie again and again, and it creates this delusion in people's mind. Most people don't know that Modi actually comes from one of the most backward communities in India, historically backward communities in India. He rose through the ranks of the political party, of his political party, and through his hard work. If there is ever in the history of independent India a leader who represents the masses, who represents the subaltern communities of India that these Harvard and UPenn, Columbia, and Berkeley people yap about from their air-conditioned rooms, it is Narendra Modi. He is the representative of that rise of the common man, the poor, underprivileged person of India. And they just can't handle it. They don't even want to talk about it, because if they do, their own ideological base, their own ideological narrative, their own ideological thrust falls apart. And they have no reason to do their PhDs anymore. I would say half of Berkeley's South Asia, India department would be jobless if they actually came to know that Modi is not a Brahmin.
Yeah, really. I mean, election of Prime Minister Modi is as historic when it comes to the other backward classes as classified with the Indian Constitution. I really personally don't believe that there is we should be classifying people as, there are people who have been historically marginalized, and we should probably come up with a better term to describe that than to call them backward. But as it may be, it's a constitutional term that is used in India. Ascendance of Prime Minister Modi to the highest seat of power is really, in some ways, no different than ascendance of President Barack Obama. It is historic when it comes to the ascendance of of a community that has been historically deprived of the seat of power for him to get to the power. I mean, that is Uh, we should be, look, I mean, for, entire Nehru dynasty uh, belong to the so-called upper caste, and so I think this is a historic moment for India, and for Freedom House to not, for a research organization like Freedom House to not understand that, to not really, you know, grasp that is, is somewhat surprising and somewhat bewildering as to why they would have not thought about this. I mean, that just kind of negates a lot of the research, right?
Well, I don't, as I mean, we are going around in a little bit of circle here, but it just highlights the fact, and this is not just about Freedom House. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The same narrative in the so-called woke society in America and by extension around the world, and it is built on dishonesty, propaganda, and a real vile approach towards a native civilization that has withstood 1,000 years of colonization and through so much suffering. So that is what we really need to talk about. I mean, if the so-called woke people in America want to be a supporter of the underdog, as they hope and wish they are, they shouldn't be standing by the American Hindu community, the Hindus around the world, and people of India, and Prime Minister Modi by extension.
All right. So with that, let me come to the Hindu good news of the week. So, there is every cloud has a silver lining, and we need to recognize the good news that in the Hindu community. So the Hindu good news of the week, and we have two this time. And let me share my screen with you, and let me show you the Hindu good news of the week. So that the first good news of the week is Gloria Arira, a person from Brazil, received the Padma Shri Award for promoting Hindu Dharma in Brazil for 40 years. And we need to recognize the fact that there are people who are not of Indian origin, and they did not get converted by force. They did not get converted by fraud. They did not get converted by inducements. They came to Bharat, or they came in contact with someone who was practicing Hindu Dharma, maybe some guru, maybe some book, and from their heart, they adopted the Hindu Dharma. Okay, and in this particular case, Gloria Arira went back to Brazil and promoted Hindu Dharma in Brazil. So that's good news of the week, right? And I would like you to talk about the second good news of the week. So this is something that you have picked. Please tell us a little bit, and then I'll play the video.
Well, this is a lawmaker in New Zealand who actually called out the so-called woke, inherent woke bias, and he's calling out what is the outcome of the narrative that is built by the Freedom Houses and the New York Times and the Washington Post and the toolkits and the Soroses of the world. So he's a leader he's a politician in New Zealand, and he's calling out those politicians in New Zealand who are the direct outcomes of the media propaganda that comes out of the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Freedom Houses of the world. So please go ahead and play it.
Yep.
For Bruce. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I've been approached by many Australians over the weekend appalled at the Treasurer's disgraceful performance last week. He thought he was being funny, attacking Labor for showing interest in New Zealand's innovative wellbeing budget. But he did so by mocking and ridiculing Indian and Hindu culture and their religious practices. He denigrated ashrams, robes, yoga and meditation. Now, the Treasurer would not make such jokes about Christians or Muslims or his own Jewish faith, would he? So why are ancient practices of Hindus and Indians so funny to him? Liberal MPs just laughed along like they're yelling now, but I was appalled. I've been to India. I spent time in ashrams, meditating, doing yoga. Yoga and meditation have been proven by modern science to have health and well-being benefits, and they're now taught in many schools. Frankly, this parliament and those opposite would function much better if we all spent a bit of time each day calming down and reflecting. Now, this wasn't a politically incorrect private remark or words taken out of context. It was a sledge in the national parliament where the highest standards should apply. Now, I don't think he was being racist, but it was culturally insensitive, the verbal equivalent of doing blackface in the chamber. He should reflect on his words and find his apology within, and actually have a look at the wellbeing budget. It's interesting. It doesn't mean abandoning fiscal discipline, but it's founded on the idea that financial prosperity alone is not a sufficient measure of the quality of human life. It's not really that radical.
Hey, so that why do this anti-Hindu narrative seem to emerge from the liberal left nowadays? Shouldn't I always thought that the liberal left would relate more to the to the Hindu underlying principles of meditation, yoga, and general well-being of the human beings, right?
Well, I don't say it just emerges from the liberal left. It comes from both left, all three, left, center, and right. I think there is a section of the liberal left that has a significant influence of Islamists on their psyche, and they are the ones who peddle this more. And it is a global phenomenon. It's not just specific to India. It is happening in other parts of the world. So that's the part of the liberal left that becomes anti-India very fast, anti-Hindu very fast. But there is a significant portion of the center and right as well, who for their own reasons are anti-India and anti-Hindu. The right has its own colonization history, the history of conversion activities against Hindus. So there are people from all sides, I have to say, but there is the woke left which is getting into this more because of the influence of the Islamists.
So now with that we come to Hindu Seva Act of the Week. I want to, while I project that, I want to acknowledge Vandana Sharma ji for creating this really nice graphics for Hindu Pact. She is now the director of marketing for Hindu Pact, and so we want to welcome her to the team. And today is the International Women's Day, and she has created these memes for International Women's Day. Several of them, we have posted them on our Instagram, all related to Hindu women. And we want to take this opportunity to say that, please donate to Hindu Pact, because on this Women's Day, where we will, we bring about the issues that are important to Hindus. You would be supporting the Hindu Dharma in America, and I want to, urge you to go to World Hindu Council, World Hindu Council America on Instagram and look at our memes and actually follow us. So you can see the memes. There are 5 of them. I picked a couple of them, and it shows the strength of Hindu women through the thousands of years of Hindu history. These are enshrined in Hindu mandirs and other places. You can see that all over India. And please do donate to hindupact.org. You can go to the website hindupact.org, and there's a button on the right hand side says donate. Click on that and donate to Hindu Pact.
So if you go back a little bit, Ajay, I just wanted to clarify something. So first of all, thank you so much, Vandana ji, for doing this beautiful graphics and picking the right iconography. The women in these timeless stone carvings are, you can see them. She's carrying 2 short swords. Short swords are weapons not of infantry men or women, but of special forces. Special forces historically, normal infantry carries a shield and an attacking weapon, either a spear or a sword. She's carrying short swords on both hands. She was the special forces of her time, and that was what the most interesting thing was about this this particular carving. And Ajay, you mentioned they're in temples and historical monuments across India. They're in temples and historical monuments across Asia. They all the way from, they are images and iconography in what is present day Pakistan and Afghanistan, all the way to what is present day Malaysia, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So this was across the Hindu dharmic tradition in entire Asia, not just India. I just wanted to put that
and
on.
then archery. I mean, every aspect of warfare and every aspect of spirituality in India, women historically women led. So
Archer,
this
it's a double curved bow, which is which, if you believe the leftist historians of the Indian subcontinent, didn't exist in India. Indians used to make bows out of bamboos, and the double curved bow was something that the Mongols and the Turks brought to the Indian subcontinent. So there you go.
uh, and with that, we come to the very final, so this is again Hindu Seva Act of the Week. We already mentioned hindupact.org. Please do donate generously to us. And we then go to the final segment with Sada of Hindu phobe of the week.
Well, the Hindu hater of the week. I think you have the wrong slide, Ajay bhai. You need to.
No, I've not gone to that slide yet. But so that let's call it Hindu phobe of the week, because we have to bring the community together. So let's call it Hindu phobe of the week. And so that we talked about George Soros, and we talked about him meeting Prime Minister of Pakistan and we don't know, probably complimenting them on the human rights in Pakistan, right? And look, this is yesterday.
I'm pretty sure George Soros doesn't care about human rights of anybody in Pakistan. George Soros is focused on getting rid of Prime Minister Modi. He has been open about it. He has, when I say he, I'm just not saying he as an individual. There's a whole ecosystem of woke left globalists working in conjunction with Islamists. They have done that in many other countries of the world. Most places they have failed, led to tremendous human misery. Just look at Libya and Syria, the amount of human misery and suffering they brought to these places. Not to mention the Al-Qaeda that came with it. And unfortunately, they want to do the same to Indian subcontinent with India. Hopefully, it's not going to work out. But I mean, if ever George Soros is ever hearing about this and watching this show, he should look into Pakistan, his friends, Imran Khan, what's happening there under Imran Khan. And 5 members of a Hindu family killed in Pakistan, in Multan. It's just every day happening. It's either forced conversion or death. So,
and this was particularly brutal because they were murdered with knife and axes. This was not just someone coming and shooting and all death is bad, but this is a particularly brutal killing of a family which had forever lived in Multan in Pakistan. It's not like these are the thousands of years of history of that family living in that area, and one day, just because they're Hindus, their throats are slit and they're killed with knife and axes. This is
so if you read the school textbooks in Pakistan, the amount of hate that they project towards the Hindu community there, it is surprising. This is an outcome of that. I mean, people feel it's their religious duty to kill Hindus there. So that's what it leads to, brutal murders of, and these people, Multan historically has been one of the centers of Hindu civilization for more than 3,000 years. At least that's what is known to us. And, to see the people suffering there so much at the hands of Islamists, that's what we should be talking about. That's what George Soros should be talking about.
Yeah. With that somber note, with our condolences to whatever family is left to mourn for them, we we pay our condolences, pay our respects to people who were killed in Multan. And with that, we come to an end of our show today, Utsada. Once again, for those who are joining us, thank you very much for calling. Thank you very much. Sorry, commenting. We didn't get any calls today, but thank you very much for commenting on our chat. We want to thank all those who watched us live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and for the first time on Tag TV. We are Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, which is the policy research and advocacy collective, an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, with Utsav Chakraborty, the executive director of Hindu Pact. I am Ajay Shah, I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America, VHPA. We come live every week at 11 o'clock Eastern. So, Utsada, we'll see you again next week on Hindu Lounge at 11 o'clock Eastern. With that, thank you and namaste. And please continue the streaming, because we'll play the tune that was specially created for Hindu Lounge by Bharat and Padma Jayaraman. So with that, thank you everyone. Namaste. And please listen to this custom tune just created for Hindu Lounge.